Welcome to Wine Plus AI. We're your hosts and wine lovers, Adrie and Seyna. This is the podcast where we break it all down for real people, not the people who are working in the terminal.
Just the truth about AI. What's brilliant, what's broken, and what's straight up ridiculous.
Let's get into it. All right, welcome back to another episode of Wine Plus AI. We have today on the table, we have a bottle of Pietro Rosso, which is rustic, earthy, red wine, not pretending to be anything but what it is. Kind of like a person's identity. Rough edges, real roots, the opposite of AI beige. Today, we are addressing the question of an AI identity crisis. Who are you if AI can do your job and your hobbies?
Yeah, I think this one is a really, really interesting episode. So I'm excited to dive into this topic. And I immediately, when we were discussing the content of this episode and researching, thought of one case of last year. Scarlet Johansson, we all know her, I think, and it's OpenAI last year. So to recap, for those of you who don't know, basically she was asked by Sam Altman and his team a few times if she would be willing to be the voice of ChatGPT, but she declined. And then they released Sky, the voice assistant ChatGPT, and it sounded very much like her, which did not go down well. And there was also a legal conversation about this. A lot went on. And basically they ended up using very similar voice to hers, which one could argue is hers, without her consent. And that kind of, directly raises the question of, can it do your job, really? And what is left if it can?
Well, I think on paper, it might be able to do your job. Again, I think we've talked about this in our LinkedIn episode. You have all of these people online saying like, I replaced my marketing team with 7 AI agents and one AI agent does this, the other does that. And hypothetically, they can probably replace you if you're doing like the bare minimum. But when you talk about human creativity, and I hope that you are creative enough to say that AI will not replace you. I don't think it necessarily is able to, but I think the core of this question is all about the human story behind the person. And I think we're going to really dive into that today.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think what you just mentioned in regards to, if you are leaning into the creativity of your work, like it can't really replace you. I do sometimes wonder about this in the case of juniors. Where for juniors, obviously, a lot of times you are doing more of the what one would maybe call busy work execution and are not necessarily utilizing your creativity to the fullest extent because of what you have been hired for or because maybe it's your first job, for example. So like if I look at my role, for example, I'm not worried about AI doing my job because creativity is a big part of it. But if I look at like previous roles when I was at the beginning of my career where I was really, really just executing, a lot of the things there I now do with AI as well. So I do see the kind of like worry from that angle.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I think I've told this story before. I don't think in this particular podcast, but when I first started out in my career, I worked for the, not even in my career, this is like proto-career in university. I worked for the political magazine. And you would think, being a content person as I am, that I would have been writing for the political magazine. And I'm super opinionated. So you think, that's perfect. That's Adrie. No, I was too scared to. I did the design work, like kind of the production work and the design work for it because I was just too scared to write and I didn't think that I was a good writer. And then I got to a professional career and it took a little bit of massaging for me to actually really, and a lot of practice to really actually get comfortable with it, let alone good at it. And I just think that in this day and age, people are not afforded that opportunity, the time and the kind of like developing your comfort zone and getting good at something before you actually have to do the job. And it gave me enough time, that period gave me enough time to form opinions, to become more creative, and gave me the space and the flexibility to do that. And I just feel like this next generation is not being afforded that same opportunity. Yeah, I don't know where to go from there, but it is a little scary.
Yeah, it definitely is. Just for the record, you are a great writer, by the way. I think I've sent you too many DMs with, please can you help me with this one?
Say it again.
Exactly. But yeah, so just for the record on that one. I do think also that a big part that plays into this is that for a lot of people, and especially in generations Gen Z and above, so Gen Z and older, work plays a really, really big part in the identity. So I would say if I look at most of my friends who are also millennials, for them, work is a really huge part of who they are and how they also define success for themselves. I think this is something that is also shifting quite a bit with the younger generations, where I think this is also starting in Gen Z a lot, where a lot of people don't see work as like a goal per se, but more as a means to an end. Yeah. And like it's a need, right? Like you need to pay your bills, but that's it. So you work to live rather than live to work. And I think with a lot of the older generation,
whoa, don't look at me as the older generation. My God, excuse me.
Still, you are a millennial. But with the generations millennial and above, there is way more of an identity attachment to work, where that crisis is a lot more likely. But of course, those are also not necessarily the people in junior positions because they've been in the workforce for a longer time. But it can, of course, still be people in jobs with a high volume of repetitive work, for example, that AI can actually help with.
Yeah. So I think in my perspective, I'm like, okay, well, listen, if AI replaces still quite a lot of the work that I do, great, go ahead, do that. But I still offer quite a lot of perspective and quite a lot of creativity that I think adds to that skill set. But indeed, I think if you go to the, as you said, more junior or repetitive roles with more repetitive work, then what scares me is that they don't have time to ground themselves in developing those perspectives and those opinions that add the story to what they offer beyond just their raw skills, that kind of hone those raw skills into something that is really valuable for a company or really valuable for a team. How would people go about finding those sooner rather than later?
That's a very good question.
We can't just say like become more opinionated and call it a day.
No, definitely not.
You need time, you need perspective, right?
Yeah, it does. It does take time. It does take also the headspace per se, not just time to be able to do so. So it is quite a tough thing, I think, to resolve. But we talked a lot about the work context. I quickly want to also look at it from the other angle, right? We have hobbies. All of us have hobbies. For example, I love to play the piano, and I also sometimes like to write music. But that's something that AI, in theory, can also do, right? It's like I can also prompt it, but the output is questionable, to say the least. And now you're also very creative, so outside of work. What's your take on it from a personal perspective?
Yeah. So I think when we were talking about this episode, I had the perfect example. So I've recently gotten into needlepoint, which is granny core. This is like my ultimate granny hobby. I'm 33 for the record, but I spend my Friday nights, sometimes, not always, at home needlepointing, which, okay.
Love that for you, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe sometimes depressing, but I love it. And I recently finished a pillow, like a pillow cover. And when thinking about this discussion, of course, if you had a machine that was trained on AI, basically like AI could potentially do this. It could design the pillowcase, it could make it could do all these things. But would you buy it? Would you, and I've been posting about it on Instagram. I know my Instagram is like really boring. I'm just like posting updates about my needlepoint projects, but you follow it.
Yeah. And to be honest, I'm invested. Like, I love watching the updates. I have to see that you're having a great time with it. Like, I think you were posting something last week and I was like, amazing. So much progress. This looks so much fun. I think you like changed something, like your approach last weekend. And I was like, oh, why did you change it? Like I almost texted you about it and I was like, this is a bit much.
Honestly, I think I've like reached a weird demographic of people who are interested in needlepoint. So if you're listening to this and potentially interested in granny content, hit me up because I have it for you. But there's like a weird demographic of people that are very interested in needlepoint, but they're interested more about the process and about the creation of the thing.
Exactly.
And bringing this all back to our conversation about AI and authenticity, and if AI can actually replace you, yes, it could, but it cannot create that story that is engaging and is personal and brings you along in the process. So I think like some advice to people who are maybe in more junior positions, wanting to kind of like frame their career in a way or skill set in a way that is not replaceable by AI, is developing your own story about how did you come to those skills and what is behind those skills that gives you a good perspective. So if you have traveled a lot, if you've been to university in a specific spot, if you learned this skill because of a certain reason, I think that's super important to share and share very publicly because that's bringing them along in the story.
Yeah, and I think it's also exactly those things that are completely unique to being a human. And it's something that AI just cannot be, which is those like lived experiences, but also the intuition that comes with it, right? It's like you learn from the things you do in life and you develop an intuition for things. That's something that AI can never replace. So yeah, like you already said, would really lead into those unique factors that also make you unique in what you can do and who you are, and finding something that helps you also hone those skills more.
Yeah. And I think there is also, again, we talked about this in our LinkedIn episode, but there is this natural human intuition for AI bullshit, the too perfect. And luckily we're going towards this space, which is more accepting of flaws, more accepting of kind of like the human messiness and chaos of things. We don't want ultra perfect blog articles, for example. Also, blog articles, nobody wants those. Nobody wants those now. But I think we're moving towards this acceptance of the messiness. And I think to have your own brand of this human messiness is so important. And I'm so excited for it because as a content person, throughout my career, it has been nitpicking every single spelling error, every single like grammatical error in a document, or, you know, looking at if the spacing is exactly so on a landing page. And now I'm so happy that we're in a spot where, number one, AI can take care of that if you need it to take care of that. But then developing the tweaks or like the weird things that are going to make you and also your brand, if you're developing one, special.
Yeah, and to be honest, on that note, I absolutely love when I get an email and there is a spelling mistake in it. It's super random, but I just know that that person wrote the email themselves, or if like the grammar is a bit off, for example. And I'm just like, cool, you actually like spent the time writing it, especially when it's about something bigger and not just like a, hey, catch up email kind of thing. I really, really like the messiness of things as well there, where you just see, okay, a human actually put their thoughts into it and didn't just throw it into ChatGPT.
Well, sounds like a Slack message to a colleague rather than necessarily a AI generated email.
Exactly.
I think that's quite nice. All right. Who are you if AI can do your job? I think that's a very deep question. It's soul searching. I think we've covered that for juniors. It's particularly difficult. Anything else we want to say?
Yeah, I think what is important to kind of keep in mind when it comes to AI in the work context is that, of course, it can be really useful if you work with it as a collaborator, rather than looking at it from a replacement angle, right? So it can definitely enhance your abilities. It can also enhance your skills and help you lean into your best abilities already. And it can also be a bit of a cheat code, right? Because it allows you to outsource stuff that you don't necessarily want to do or don't have the headspace for. It's just kind of annoying and allows you to actually have the fun and joy in work. So yeah, I think it's really about finding the right balance for it to be a help to your skills and to the things that are unique to you as a human, rather than a replacement to full creativity and the uniqueness, which I think it just cannot be.
And I think if I'm going to add to that, I think it's also about developing your own story. So AI doesn't have the story behind how you got to where you are. And it's also not maybe partially part of how you get to the next part of your story. But I think it's on you to develop and frame that story in a way that's unique to you and your context and you as a person. And I think it's quite cool that now we're in an age, I want to see it in a positive light, right? Because I think we're in this no matter what we choose. But I do think it's nice to be confronted sometimes to be like, hey, you have to have a story. It's like when you go out to find a job and if you just show what's on your CV, I don't think you're necessarily going to do as well as somebody who frames their CV in the context of a story of who you are as a person and how you got there, and puts it into the context of whatever company you're applying to, whatever. I think that we should see every opportunity that we engage with at work as that kind of opportunity to frame yourself and to frame your perspective and to add to more than just your skills. Because of course now your skills could be replaced by AI. If you're there just tippy-tapping on your computer, then you're going to be, you're not really setting yourself up for long-term success, I think.
Yeah, and I think that kind of leads also to the question probably everyone should be asking themselves is probably not, okay, how is AI going to replace me and what can AI do instead of me? But what does AI enable me to be? And also what does it enable me to do?
All right. If that's it, then just another shameless plug for the Joy Lab, where you can find this podcast. The Joy Lab is all about exploring AI in the context of, you guessed it, joy. We don't want to talk about faster, more efficient, time saving, more money saved. We want to talk about how AI is actually bringing more joy to your day-to-day. Join us there, listen in there. There's going to be more content, and thanks.
See you next time. That's it for this week. You know the drill.
Like, subscribe,
and see you next week.
Cheers.